Hi there. In the next 5 minutes, I want to talk you through how you can use smart content curation to not only massively improve your on-site engagement and your social traction, but also to save you a ton of time. Now, I've read a really interesting statistic recently that said that within a 48-hour period now, there's more content published than there was from the dawn of time up until 2003. Now, that's a pretty crazy statistic, and I think it tells us three things. Number one, it tells us that most of it is crap. We haven't suddenly got loads more interesting. Number two, it tells us that the world probably doesn't need a lot more of it. And number three, it tells us that what the world does need is help making sense of what's already there. And this is where content curation comes in. So sites like Buzzfeed and Upworthy, what they've done brilliantly in the last few years is they've scoured the web for the stuff that's already there, and they found the very best of it, the most informative, the most life-changing, the most inspirational, the most shocking pieces of content that either apply to a particular market or address a particular emotional need, and they've brought it all together in a simple way that makes sense to the user. So, in the spirit of content curation, what I've done is I've pulled together some of my favourite pieces of advice from the founders of these two companies. So we'll kick it off with Eli Pariser of Upworthy. Now, one thing he talks about is how they use, how Upworthy, they use social media primarily as their means of identifying really interesting pieces of content, really interesting stories. So rather than looking at websites and blogs, what they do is they look at, in particular, Facebook, but all forms of social media, and they try to identify those little stories that have got a disproportionately high level of engagement, because that's great insight into the kind of traction it could get when they promote it on a much, much bigger scale. So always look at social first of all. Number two, he talks about how they insist on having 25 headlines for every new story that's published, because that is how important the headline is. Number three, he says that politics, it doesn't get shared, which can be a little bit surprising, and actually this isn't specifically about politics, this is about divisive subjects in general. What he's saying is that generally there's this belief that if a story is powerful, if it evokes strong emotions with people, then it's going to lend itself to getting shared. And that isn't true. It'll lend itself to getting lots of clicks, but if it's divisive, people will rarely take the risk because they don't want to divide opinion among their friends. So do take that into account. And finally, he says that topicality matters, but newness doesn't. So again, another common belief online is that if you want to really get traction with a story, you've got to be the first one to jump all over it. And he says, actually, that just is not true. Generally speaking, it's much better for a story to have done quite a few laps around the block, really embedded itself in people's minds, and then that's when a new angle on that story, that's when it's most likely to go viral. So, what does Jonah Peretti of Buzzfeed have to say? Well, one of the things he talks about is he says that before you even begin the process, you need to identify the identity of your audience, because people share content in order to share their identity. That's their driving force behind doing it. So first of all, you've got to understand how they define themselves as individuals. Number two, he says that one of your most powerful weapons in your sort of sharing armory is nostalgia. So whether we're talking about the memory of an old pet, for example, or a piece of content that triggers a memory of, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be an old video game, or an era in time, or a music band, or an item of clothing. It could be anything. But by that piece of content that evokes that shared memory among networks of people, that is one of the most powerful tools you've got for that piece of content to then get shared further and further. So hugely, hugely powerful. Number three, he says that the story is not actually about the story itself, but about the emotion it elicits. So a great example here is Buzzfeed and cats. So Buzzfeed are basically synonymous with cats now, but he says that it's not about cats. Cats are irrelevant. It's just that cats are a particularly powerful subject for evoking certain emotions, in particular humour. And finally, he says it's all about lists, because ultimately one stunning image of a beautiful place you should visit before you die is fantastic. But 10 stunning images of 10 beautiful places you should visit before you die is much, much better. And what's more is that by giving a specific number, so saying you're going to see 7 of these or click here for 22 of those. By giving that promise that you're going to get a particular number of something, what you're doing is saying to the user that it's going to be in a very digestible format. And that is so, so powerful when it comes to earning those initial clicks. So, the next time you find yourself about to add a little more garbage to the world of content, maybe just pause for a moment, have a little look around, see if you can spot something nice and shiny with lots of potential that just got missed the first time around. Then polish it up, put it alongside some other similar gems and give them all the promotion that they deserve. It's good to recycle. See you next time.